Up next is one of my favorite topics, that of behavioral sciences. Amy Jansen is our head of behavioral science, and she'll be speaking to none other than Wendy Wood regarding investor habits. Amy, over to you.
Thanks so much, Tamisha. So great today that we get the opportunity to talk about habits with one of the world's leading experts on habits. Now, you might be wondering, in an investments conference, why are we talking about habits? Well, we're talking about habits because so often what investment options are available to us and to our clients is really limited by the money habits that they might have, good or bad. Good money habits, and there might be a lot to invest, a lot of flexibility. Bad money habits, and it could be a bit tricky to make those really great investing decisions. And so today we're looking at how can we understand habits better so that we can equip ourselves and our clients to have the kinds of habits that enable us to make great investing decisions. And to do this, we'll be chatting to Professor Wendy Wood. Professor Wendy Wood is the author of the book, Good Habits, Bad Habits. But more importantly, she's written over 100 important articles that have been published in the scientific literature. So she really knows the science of habits. And this is where the tricky bit comes in, is there's far too many books out there that seem to be about habits, but are actually not that faithful to the science. With Professor Wood, she knows the science, but she can also communicate in a way that makes it really easy and accessible for all of us. So really excited that we get the opportunity today to catch up with her and learn more about this fascinating topic. Hello, Professor Wood. It is so lovely to have you joining us today. I'd love to start off with a question. In your book, you talk about the willpower hypothesis and how dangerous it is. So could you explain for our audience today, what is the willpower hypothesis and why is it so dangerous?
Well, it's really the way most of us think about our behavior. We think we have to exert effort and control our behavior in order for us to reach our goals. And the irony is that willpower is actually it's not fun, and it's not something that lasts for very long. So few of us can exert willpower long enough to save money for retirement, to eat healthfully enough so that we actually lose weight or exercise for long periods so that we actually become fit. Willpower is not set up for that. It's really good at changing in the short run. So that is how we change behaviors that are sort of one-offs. They're single decisions that we make, like joining a retirement program at work or deciding to switch banks or investment entities. Those are decisions we make thoughtfully, and they're sort of one-off decisions. But for the long-term goals, where you have to keep repeating behavior, willpower is just not going to be effective. And there's actually a kind of a counterproductive aspect to it, that if you deny yourself things, like you put yourself on a diet, or you try to save money and try not to spend anything, if you do that over and over, what you're doing is you are activating thoughts of whatever it is you're missing. And that's why you find yourself sort of obsessing with the things that you're denying yourself. And it's this ironic nature of the desires we control. And we've known this for a long time, but intuitively, it seems to most of us like it's the right thing to do. And that's the counterproductive, that's the difficulty with using willpower. It's not persistent, and it actually has counterproductive effects.
That is just, it is, as you say, so counterintuitive. that it would have this kind of effect. But when you explain it like that, it just makes so much sense. So when you said we're like, we have these once-off decisions and then we have these kind of long-haul goals. What is the main difference between these things, and why is it that what works in the one domain kind of doesn't transfer to the other domain?
Well, they require different types of action control. So psychologists, neuroscientists in the last few years have found that people, when they make decisions in a single time, they're using certain neural systems to do that. So you use the prefrontal cortex, hippocampus, depending upon the specific decision. Those are part of our thinking, deciding areas of the brain. But when we do things that require repeated action, and we start doing them over and over again, we engage different neural areas, different systems in the brain. And those are systems, basal ganglia, the striatum, the putamen, that are activated when we repeat behaviors over and over, like going to the gym, putting money into retirement savings, if we do that on a regular basis each month when we get our paycheck. Those are the sorts of behaviors that require habit neural systems. And those are the kind that are best controlled through habit memory. I mean, we think of ourselves as some kind of unified whole, right? We are one person. And that's true in a sense, but the human brain evolved over evolutionary history to have lots of different systems, some of which can function relatively independently. And that's the habit system. And you're forming habit memories all the time. You don't need to try to do that. It's something that is characteristic of all mammals, and it just requires repeating a behavior and getting a reward. Over time, you learn to connect the context you're in with the behavior you just engaged in that got you that reward. And for humans, rewards can be things as simple as feeling pride in balancing your checkbook, or getting positive responses from other people. All of these are rewards that make a difference to humans. And that's how people form habits.
Okay, so we're hearing some of these ingredients here, that kind of the context, the rewards, the repetition. So if you're an advisor and now you're supporting someone else in terms of maybe breaking some bad habits or forming some good habits, how can you as an advisor best support? What would be the big do's and don'ts in playing that supporting role and helping someone form and break habits?
Well, people get really focused on outcome, right? On what the outcome of a behavior is, and whether they're successfully saving money, whether they're spending too much, what kinds of returns they're getting on their investments, did they make the right decisions? Forming habits is something that happens through repetition. So as an advisor, helping people understand that doing the behavior is enough. And ultimately, it will become automatic so that you do it without thinking, and you do it without struggle, without willpower. That's how people who successfully pay bills, who pay down debt, people who save money, they have formed habits to do so, and they do so without thinking. So the whole idea of exerting self-control, struggling, willpower, effort. That can be useful right at the beginning, but over time, that's going to become much less important as people learn to focus on the behavior itself and just keep repeating what's easy and what's rewarding. Those are what's going to allow habits to form, and that's what's going to make people successful. So helping people understand what the specific behaviors are that they will help them achieve their goals and how to repeat them regularly is really the goal here for advisors.
Okay, excellent. And in your book, you talk about this concept of habit discontinuities and how they're these golden moments, these golden opportunities for breaking and forming habits. And we had a whole wave of that at the beginning of COVID, where there was this huge discontinuity. And now we're doing the vaccines and we're potentially approaching another series of habit discontinuities. How could advisors use that to really help their clients to take advantage of the opportunity that affords?
Yeah, people don't like change. None of us do. And these changes are really challenging in the short run. But they are also, as you say, opportunities, because they are opportunities they're opportunities to change our behavior. When our habits have been disrupted because of these shifts like COVID, people started to work from home more. Schools closed, so a lot of families were dealing with online learning. Those changes mean that our spending habits change and our purchasing, the way we buy stuff has changed. What we buy has changed. And our experience of spending money has changed. Those are opportunities. We're no longer constrained in the same way by our old habits. And it gives us a sort of a window to make new decisions without the constraints of old habits. One of the best examples, I think, of this was a strike in the London Underground that was only a partial strike. So commuters could still use the system, but they had to follow new routes because some of the stations that they typically went through weren't open. 5% of the commuters actually found new, faster routes that allowed them to get to work more quickly, and they stuck with those after the strike. So the same applies to our current situation. We're all dealing with new challenges, but that also opens up new opportunities. We may learn to do things that we haven't considered before. And that's obviously one of the reasons why so many people are now shifting to online purchasing. It was there before COVID. We could buy stuff online, but few of us did it as much as we have done during the pandemic, simply because it's easier, it's safer, and many of us will continue to do that after the pandemic because it's so much more convenient. So that's an example of how people have shifted their financial decisions slightly in a way that's likely to stick. Some won't, because people won't find the new behavior quite as beneficial once they get back to life as it used to be.
And then there's this thing that often goes around where people say, okay, if you want to create a habit, you gird up your willpower in the beginning, say it is, and then you just need to make it for 21 days, and then you've cracked it. Is there any truth to this idea that 21 days makes a habit?
Be lovely if we could all form habits in 21 days. It's a short amount of time, seems doable. Most of us can imagine sticking with something for that long. But habit memory, is a kind of a learning system. It's a way we learn about the world through experience. And things that are difficult to learn are just going to take longer than things that are easy to learn. They're going to be easy to repeat in comparison to things that are difficult to learn. So there's not any magic number of times you have to repeat a behavior in order for it to become habitual. Instead, it depends on how difficult the behavior is. There was a study done by a former postdoc of mine with simple health habits. And she found that it takes about 3 months of daily repetition for simple behaviors like drinking a glass of water or having fruit at a meal for them to become habitual, in the sense that people did them automatically without really having to think about what they were doing.
Sure, 3 months sounds long. So I think that really sort of, it sort of sets the scene that there are these pieces that we need to get right. It's like there's this context piece, there's this piece about repetition, and there's this piece about reward, but it's not necessarily reward the way we think about it financially. As you said, it can be as simple as a sense of pride, or someone just saying, well done. And so does that create a space then for the advisor to be that kind of reward in a social sense and just say, well done, you're doing it, you're on the way?
Yeah, advisors can help people understand what behaviors are likely to help them meet their financial goals and to feel good at the time when people are performing them. So if you can help clarify what those behaviors are, how to do them easily, because ease is important for repetition, we're much more likely to repeat things that are easy to do than things that are more difficult, and help people figure out how to make them rewarding. That's going to be really effective for habit formation. Now, one of the tricks, of course, with rewards is that the reward needs to be immediate when you engage in a behavior. So long-term rewards, like checking in with your financial advisor at the end of the month and having them say, good job, that's not going to do it. So you have to help people understand how to feel pride or accomplishment or see some benefit to the behavior as they engage in it. And the reason for that is because habits form in part through when we release dopamine. Dopamine is a neurochemical. We've all heard of it as sort of the feel-good neurochemical. It does a lot of things. One of the things it does is it helps us form habits. So when you engage in a behavior that gets a reward, your brain releases dopamine, and that helps to form those habit connections so that it starts to make the behavior more automatic the next time you're in that context. So experiencing the reward immediately when you perform the behavior is important. And that's why people sometimes say that behaviors that are intrinsically motivating, ones that are themselves rewarding, don't require some outcome or some long-term effect to generate the rewards, that those immediately rewarding behaviors are the ones that most readily form into habits.
Okay, excellent. So our advisors the thing is, they find the behavior, they help their client identify how to make it as easy as possible, and then they find that strategy of reward that is immediate. So it's not about just looking into the future, and it's like, as you do it, what is that thing you're going to do to make yourself feel good in the moment?
Exactly. The example I always use is working out. So many of the machines in the gym are boring and tedious. But if you can find something to add to them, like listening to podcasts, reading stupid novels, then you can make the behavior itself rewarding. And then that becomes a sort of a stepping stone to forming a habit based on that behavior.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Professor Wood. We really appreciate your time today. This has been so insightful, and I'm sure our audience will have enjoyed it as much as I have.
Oh, thank you so much. Lovely talking with you.
So now I'm sure you're all ready and fired up to go and create new habits and break old bad ones. And if you do want to go deeper, I highly recommend Professor Wood's book, Good Habits, Bad Habits. It's exceptionally useful, both to use personally and also in your professional life. And with that, I'm going to pass back to Tamisha in the studio. Thank you so much, Tumi.
Thank you so much, Amy and Wendy, for your insights, which I'm sure resonate with so many of us.